Hi, I'm Saverio from HoRNet Plugins, and today I want to show you the Dyna Q, our latest plugin. Dyna Q is a dynamic equalizer. It's a very peculiar type of equalizer because usually standard equalizer lets you set the frequency of action, the width of the frequencies that are affected with a Q knob, and the gain applied to the center frequency of this range of frequencies. This is very useful to shape the sound of a track. But what happens if you have to fix some resonance or to add some frequencies that are missing in the audio you are working with? Generally, EQs work always, so you are cutting also when you don't have to cut, and you are adding when you don't have to add. Here comes the rescue, dynamic EQ. A dynamic EQ only applies the gain when the input signal is above a certain threshold, or cuts those frequencies if they are above a certain threshold. So with this kind of action, you can polish a track only when the actual resonance kicks in. Let's make some example. Sometimes you have bass guitars that have one string, that is louder than the others, and when the bass player hits that note, you have a louder sound than the rest of the notes. So instead of just cutting everything at that frequency, with a dynamic EQ, you can cut only the resonance of that note, so that the other notes in the track are not affected. Or, for example, you have a drum loop, like the example we are going to show here, that have a very resonant snare. And so when the snare hits, you have a particular resonance that is both visible in the spectrum analyzer and clearly audible. So with dynamic EQ, you work only when the snare hits, because the snare is louder, and so if it's set above the certain threshold, the EQ cuts that the resonant frequency. And we took an approach of keeping it very simple, because we made just one band of EQ, because these kind of equalizer are mostly used to fix a problem, and so you don't want to have a specific color or some particular shelf slope or interaction with parameters like you have in vintage EQs. And so you can just drop the plugin on the track that have a problem and fix that specific problem. If you have more than one issue of resonance in that track, just use more than one EQ, so you can use it one after the other and fix each problem one by one. So now I'm going to show you each parameter. There are not so many parameters in this plugin. It's very simple but very effective, and show you one practical example of how it works to clean up resonance snare. So we have the guy here, and we have the typical EQ controls with the center frequency, the gain, and the Q factor. Then we have this switch here that allows you to listen to the EQ in action without the dynamic processing, so you can fine-tune the EQ to the resonant frequencies you want to block. We have an input knob that goes from negative 15 dBs to 15 dBs and allows you to adjust the input level. And then the speed of the dynamic action. The speed is automatically set to 1/4 note using the tempo of your DAW to set it to the correct time. If you want to adjust it manually, you can do it. Simply disable the auto button here. Then we have the threshold. The threshold is a slider that lets you see when the signal will be affected by the dynamic action of the EQ. If the sidechain indicator here is above the threshold, above this arrow here, you are going to hear some action and the gain knob actually work. Otherwise, the gain is not applied at all. You have an input meter and the sidechain indicator. You also have an auto threshold option that will let the system determine the correct threshold level at each interval. And while the sound plays, threshold is continually adjusted, comparing the filtered frequencies with the wideband frequencies. And if a resonance is discovered, the threshold is adjusted and automatically fixed. So, no more talking. Let's hear how the plugin sound and work. We have this drum loop here. It's quite good sounding, but if we look at the spectrum, we see that here we have a resonance in the snare that is around 800 Hz. So I'll start with these frequencies here and trying to find the resonant frequency by ear. So here it is. This is the frequencies, in my opinion, that is most annoying and where the most part of the resonance is. So now I can relax the Q. Let's say I go, this is by experience, around 4. And I'll start cutting drastically this resonance because I don't like it. So I want to remove 10 dBs. This is how the Q sounds by itself, without any dynamic action. As we can see from the spectrum analyzer, we have removed the resonance, but we removed also these frequencies when the resonance was not in action. So what I want to do is set the threshold now and let the Q act only when the resonance happens. So let's have a look at this sidechain indicator. Clearly, when the snare hits, the sidechain indicator goes above minus 12 dB. So I'll start putting the threshold around here. Now, look at the spectrum. We have removed the resonance and it's now more smooth, and it almost draws a straight line. That's how it should be. So let's listen with and without the plugin and hear by yourself the difference. This is without. So it's clearly more smooth, it's smoother, and one thing you have to know is that when the signal goes above the threshold, this is not the value that is applied, this is the maximum value, because the gain is applied proportionally to the difference between the sidechain level and the threshold. And one last thing, if I set the auto threshold now, you will see that arrow moves and try to always keep the right balance between the resonance and the incoming track. As you see, it's much faster because the threshold sets by itself, so you can get quicker to the point where it sounds good. And this is it. It's a very simple plugin, as I told you, but it can give amazing results. So Dyna Q is available on www.HoRNetPlugins.com. We have a demo for that you can download to evaluate the plugin. It's just silent sounds now and then. And you can try it out and let us know if you have suggestions, if you like it, and how would you improve it. Thank you very much for watching the video.